what do we do with our plant-based friends? Like, where does plant-based, is there a room for, you're plant-based? Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, tell us, because I am a believer that there's a win in all of this. We have to pull these pieces out and have deeper conversations about them. And I've seen a lot of postmenopausal women that are plant-based that are really healthy. So
Mhm.
you're plant-based. Talk about this.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been plant based since I was way before the
Oh,
trends.
wow.
My
Yeah.
high school biology teacher took us on a field trip to a pig slaughterhouse, and that kind of did it for me.
And you were
And
you were
so
done.
I was done. And growing up in San Francisco in all of the kind of like I went to high school outside of the hate. So there's lots of hippie influences. So
Oh, yeah.
that's my and environmental stuff. So yeah, all the stuff that's trendy now is kind of why I went when I was 15 with but throughout my
Right.
academic and athletic career, looking at protein intake hasn't really come up until about the past 10 to 15 years. And we're starting to see more and
Okay.
more of plant-based stuff out. And it's not about mixing amino acids, it's about maximizing your protein intake.
Mm.
So when we're talking about plant-based
Okay.
post-exercise, it's the leucine content that's really important. So we need to get around
Mhm.
3
Okay.
grams of leucine, and we see that's around 30 to 40 grams of whey protein, and you can get that equivalent if we're
Okay.
looking at pea protein isolate with maybe some hemp, or if you're not someone who's going down the powdered route, then we can look at things like chia seeds and nuts and oats soaked together with
Yeah.
goat milk or almond milk. And
Mm.
so there's ways of building that protein intake with plant-based foods that are high in
Okay.
protein. But a lot of times we don't think about things like you can have a whole plate mixed of grains and nuts and seeds and green peas and
Mm.
edamame, and you can get 40 to 60 grams of protein right there. So there's ways of
Right.
doing it when you are plant-based, but you kind of have to think outside of the box. But it's becoming much, much
Mm.
easier now with the awareness of all
Mm.
the environmental factors and health factors. So easier now than it was when I was 15, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I love this conversation because it's funny. We have a fasting group on Facebook called the Resetter Collaborative, and it has like over 100,000 people, and they're very active. The thing that shocks me is the carnivores and the plant-based people, they fight with each other all the time. And when I look at food through a hormonal lens, I'm like, okay, fiber is so important.
Super.
Like it helps us, right?
Yeah.
We
That
cannot lose
microbiome.
sight of, yeah. And
Yeah.
nuts and seeds, like, so important. So if I'm over here focused on all this meat, where am I making room for enough fiber from a hormonal lens? Super important. But then when you come over and you look at the omnivores, they're like, well, how are you getting all your amino acids?
I know.
And so you end up in this conflict of interest. And so I actually am putting out another book. I call it a food book in the fall, and it's called Eat Like a Girl. And I hired two chefs. I
Cool.
hired a plant-based chef and I hired an omnivore chef. And they're both have their expertise. And I was like, okay, make me some recipes. And they're incredible recipes, and there's room for both.
Yeah.
So I think that fact that you're out there talking about muscle and fitness and you're plant-based is really important to highlight. It's just what I heard from you is you need to be very aware of the combination you're putting together. Is that what I heard in your statement? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
get a good variety
Yep,
of these.
absolutely, and it falls into the whole gut microbiome thing and the fiber thing that we
Mm,
see as one of the biggest changing factors in about 3 to 4 years before that one point in time menopause. Like, there's a lot of research coming out
yeah,
because as you're losing hormones, you're losing a lot of the diversity of the gut microbiome, and the way you counter that is with fiber. So
right.
when I see the carnivorous diet, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what," like, the first thing to go is
Yes.
your gut microbiome. Come on, people, let's be real.
Yeah,
And you don't wanna, like,
right.
get into the full nuance of just full plant-based and then nothing either, right? Because then you can get into being too full before you get everything. So that's why when I talk about
Yes.
being plant-based, you have to be very conscious of what you're eating and how it fits together so that you're getting everything that you need, but you don't end up being too full before you get what you need. So I've written like in some of our groups, like with Haley Babcock and our Haley Happens Fitness, we get these conversations all the time. So I'm like, okay, here's a
Yeah.
day in the life of a vegan. Here's the day in the life of someone who eats meat. Here's a day in
Mm.
the life of someone who eats dairy and eggs. And they all end up being between 150 and 160 grams of protein, sitting right in that 2,200 to 2,500
Mm.
calorie. And people are like, oh my gosh, really? We can do this? I'm like, yes, we can do this. It's just being aware of
Yeah,
how,
I love that.
yeah.
Oh my god, I love that. Okay, so just so the plant-based people know, what are some of the leucine-rich plants that if you wanna trigger that leucine get that leucine amount?
So interesting, we look at edamame and green peas. So those 2 are really high, and people are like, "What?" It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
and we look at spirulina. So blue and
Mm.
green spirulina, like ounce to ounce, is the highest plant-based protein, almost complete protein that you can get. Plus it has iron. So if you're looking at making a smoothie, okay, well, you know what? If you put in frozen green peas and you put in some chia seeds and you put in some blue spirulina plus some berries, you don't even taste the green peas, and all of a sudden, here's your 40 grams
Mm.
of leucine-rich protein.
I love
Big.
that.
It digs a bit and
Yeah, I mean, well, the smoothie's great because you can hide anything in it. Like, just put enough flavor in it, and you can get all the good things and not even taste it. Do you think we got the conversation on soy wrong?
I do because it's been taken out of context. Because if we look at
Yes.
phytoestrogens and all the good things that happen and the Japanese culture of longevity, it's not just
Mm.
the soy. It's how they live, it's the other things they eat, and then when you bring it over to the Western diet and you start adding soy, it's so ultra processed that there's lots of side effects. If you're not
R
sensitive to some of the side effects, then yeah, implement it. But for me, like, I can't do tofu, but I can do tempeh because of the fermentation aspect of it. Like,
Oh.
I wouldn't use soy milk because it gives me too many of the negative side effects, but other people don't. So the Western idea of soy is very nuanced as well, because unless you are really
Mhm.
following the ethos of the Japanese lifestyle and all the benefits it has, then you could potentially have issues
Mhm.
with soy. When I look at soy as a protein
Mm.
source, I was like, it takes 50 grams of soy protein powder to match 20 grams of whey, but it only takes 30 grams of pea protein isolate to match that 20 grams of whey. And the thing with pea isolate,
Oh.
it's just on the cusp of having enough leucine. So all you have to do is add maybe another half a tablespoon, and then boom, you've hit that leucine context. But with soy,
Beautiful.
it's so much more. So again, I feel like I
Yep.
need to write a book about all of this, but I think it would take too much time.
Yes, right.
We'll just have conversation.
Yeah, it like the new yeah, I was just gonna say, what would the book could be called, like, The Nuance of Menopausal Nutrition,
Yeah,
and, like, here's all
exactly.
the things that you really need to know, so
Yes.